Alright, guys, welcome to my first ever Star Trek The Next Generation series review. The episode that I will be reviewing will be Encounter at Farpoint. The purpose of these videos aren't going to be necessarily like full fledged reviews of the episode and whatnot. It's just going to be kind of real quick thoughts of what the episode meant to me as a kid, kind of what the story was, what I liked, what I didn't like. Um, So it's not going to be like an in-depth analysis or anything like that. That would take way too much time. I don't want to do that. But these are just going to be real quick videos that anyone that hasn't watched it can kind of just listen to, or if you have, kind of go down memory lane. But it's just something fun for me to do and a reason to put on the uniform. So, but anyway, Star Trek: The Next Generation, Encounter at Farpoint, the very first episode. When I first watched it, it was on a little 8-inch black and white TV, and I just remember being blown away by the whole experience of it. An android, Data, a blind guy flying the ship, a kid that got to sit in the captain's chair, and for God's sake, a Klingon on board the Enterprise. To most at the time, that was just like your mind was blown. At the time, there was a lot of um, not fighting, but hostility between the Americans and the Russians and whatnot, and they had kind of put those things away. And with Star Trek, the Russians were always kind of symbolized by the Klingons, and so having the Federation be at peace with the Klingons was kind of like the symbolism for America and Russia, kind of putting away their hostilities. So it kind of kept with the times, just like the classic Star Trek used to do with modern themes, just kind of set in a sci-fi tone. And so even back then, I knew what they were doing was just kind of, ahead of its time, per se. Um, you first meet the Enterprise, and as it kind of comes down into your view, you see this small star drive section, and you see this massive saucer section. So automatically, the visual of it, you could tell this wasn't your classic Star Trek. You meet Captain Jean-Luc Picard for the first time, a bald a bald Englishman, or from France. Um, and complete opposite of Captain James T. Kirk. Now, as a little kid, I was just like, oh, I'm not really into this Captain Picard guy. He seems kind of a drag. I didn't really like kids, kind of harsh by the book. I really didn't like him at the time. Um, I, wasn't a very big fan of that. So at that time, I had seen Captain Kirk. Star Trek 4 was out around that time. So Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 were pretty big influences. So at the time, I was more of a Jim Kirk fan because I really enjoyed Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, and Star Trek 4. And then seeing Captain Picard, I just felt at the time he kind of paled in comparison. And I still do think those first couple of seasons, the character of Jean-Luc Picard was kind of not as appealing as he later became, especially the diplomatic wise, and just character wise. I felt like he was kind of like there just wasn't much depth there, unlike Captain Kirk. Then you had Commander William Riker, uh, good old babyface Riker. Um, I actually kind of preferred him in that first season. Kind of brash, no nonsense, just kind of let's go get this stuff. It needs to be done. Let's go do it. I really enjoyed his character, the Captain Kirk esque personality that he had. I really enjoyed that. Riker kind of, to me at least, kind of as he grew older, kind of did become boring. What he kind of feared in the best of both worlds. I kind of felt like that really did happen to that character. But there toward the beginning, like I really enjoyed his character. He got a lot of different things to do. But like leading the away missions. One of my favorite episodes with him uh, was with when they were in the Ferengi on the planet. So it was like I loved his leadership skill. I thought it was really cool. In this episode, they didn't really give him all that much to do. Not in the first part of the episode, at least. He was more in toward the second part, kind of leading the investigation and whatnot with Farpoint Station, Groppler Zorn. And there's a very big mystery in that. The story could be divided up into two parts. One, the Farpoint Station, the mystery of Farpoint Station, and what they're doing there, what it means to the Federation, what it could possibly mean to the Federation, because it could have, lasting effects. Um, and then the more interesting uh, storyline was the Q one. Now, from what I gather, when Gene Roddenberry first did Star Trek: The Next Generation, the pilot, he only wanted to do the Farpoint Station um, storyline. The studio had demanded that he make it a 2 hour premiere instead of a 1 hour, so that forced him to add extra stuff into the script, which thus they brought the Q character in. Which anyone watching the show would be like, oh, this is kind of like Trelane from the original series, which the character was inspired from. And they got a great actor, John Delancey, a funny, charismatic guy. The only thing I had seen him in at the time was Days of Our Lives, and just every time he got on there, he always made me laugh as a kid. So like I would skip school just so if I knew Q was on, I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna watch Q. I didn't know who John Delancey was, I just knew him as Q. But he always made me laugh, and so when I saw you know going back every time I watch those episodes, with Q, like, he's always amusing. Even though he wasn't very amusing in this episode, he was still a very interesting character and definitely a threat. So I think the studio was right in that regard to have a 2 hour premiere and then to have Q in there too. Something to make it a lot more interesting. If we had just gotten, the Farpoint Station uh, storyline, I don't think we would be looking back at this episode with the fondness that we do, and I certainly don't think we would have gotten 7 seasons of it, because honestly, it would have been kind of boring. Just my opinion, but I think the Q storyline made that story a lot more bearable. Then you had Lieutenant Commander Data. Um, as a little kid, I would watch Night Court with my parents, and so I recognized the character from there. And I always loved the character in Night Court, and I thought he was a really funny actor. I thought he always brought something to the role that he had. Um, and to see Data, like, I would mimic him as a kid a lot of the times. Whenever I would get nervous or get scared or something, I would mimic Data. And in fact, Data's character, Brent Spiner's character of Data, is actually what got me interested in acting and kind of pretending to be something a little more than you're not. I mean, because the way that character acts, he's a very good character piece on looking at humanity and looking at people in general, and very anti-Spock, but at the same time fills those shoes wonderfully. But Data was a big inspiration on what would make me, be, at least try to fill the role of an actor's shoes and try to, do different things in that regard. Brent Spiner, very good actor. I've heard he's hard to work with, but I don't know. I think the guy gives out a wonderful performance. Uh, the next character that really struck a chord with me was Worf. Like I said, the Klingon on the ship blew me away. I mean, the guy was tough. The guy was, the guy's a Klingon. The guy's, just pissed off all the time. Even though he's Starfleet, like he still kind of gives off that whole vibe of "don't piss me off." So I really enjoyed his character. Him and Data were what brought me, kept bringing me back to Star Trek: The Next Generation. Those two characters, because they weren't the typical human characters. They were, wow, alien. In my mind, I was thinking alien and androids. That's really awesome. So I thought in that regard, bringing a Klingon on, it was really a smart deal, and it was almost in fact, it was by accident that they did that. Originally, Worf, Michael Dorn was not part of the cast. They brought him on right at the very last minute, and decided to have that character. He wasn't meant to be a main character. It was just kind of like a secondary character. And I think from just that right there, that's just pretty interesting. Something that was kind of like when people do throwaway lines, and then later on, that line actually ends up being something later on. I think Worf's, pretty symbolic of that. But smart choice by either the writers or the producers. Really smart, because the character was really good, especially in the first episode. I mean, I was just blown away. I was like, man, the Klingons fight, but then Picard sends them away on the saucer section, and the guy doesn't get to fight, but you can tell he's pissed off, but he has duty and honor, and I think there's a lot that's said in his silence. So in that regard, I think it was pretty interesting choice. Then we have Lieutenant J.G. Geordie LaForge, junior grade. Um, to me, I always thought it was pretty interesting how a blind man was flying the starship Enterprise. Uh, and again, in this regard, he really didn't have a whole lot to do. There toward the end, he was able to see, like, um, when they're inside the alien entity and whatnot, he's able to use his visor to see things. Um, you get a little taste of the character and what he, has gone through being blind and whatnot. And, um, it's just really good. It was really good setup for his character, even though his character really didn't have a whole lot to do. Um, but I enjoyed the character of Geordie LaForge. The idea of him, I think, was really interesting. Up to that point, I had seen Reading Rainbow. I'm sure if you're watching this and you're around my age, you know what Reading Rainbow is. Um, hell, they even have it now in an app form for your phone, so that's kind of cool. But I knew him from Reading Rainbow, and then the miniseries Roots, which I watched with my parents as a kid. And in fact, that watching Roots is kind of what got me into understanding why racism was wrong. To kind of have empathy for um, that type of situation and understand that they're people. People are people. It's there's labels shouldn't be there. People are people, and so and that was something that I bought. Oh heck, probably about 2 months ago. I bought for Mona and me. Bought Roots because she had never seen it before, and I told her I was like, it's a mini series, but it's so damn good. But they brought the character of Kunta Kinte, which is LeVar Burton. They brought onto Star Trek Next Generation. So, like, for my mind, like, all I could think of was, wow, Reading Rainbow, and wow, Roots. So from my perspective, you had the guy from Night Court, you had the guy from Roots and Reading Rainbow, and in my mind, like they had some, and then they had John Delancey, guy from Days of Our Lives. It's like they had all-star cast from my perspective, So I mean, they were really, for, as I don't know if they were big named actors then. I don't think they were, but certainly not like they are now. But from a kid's perspective, it's like, wow, you're really hitting all the spot, all the stops. Um, then you had Wesley Crusher. Now he had like little to nothing to do in this episode except for get kicked off the bridge by Picard. Which just being a kid at that age, I love the idea of Wesley Crusher, because I was like, wow, a kid gets to sit in the captain's chair. That's awesome. To me, I wanted to be on the bridge so I could look at Star Trek through his eyes. Kind of like why I like the character of Robin, or that's what got me into comics, because I could look at that and be like, well, I'm too young to be Batman, but I could be Robin. Like, I relate to this character. So that's why Wesley Crusher has always been my favorite. I was around his age. I was a little younger than he was when I was 14. He was getting on his you know uniform, sitting at the con. And I really looked up to that. I really really respected that. Because I thought, wow, this is a kid, and he's got the respect and admiration of his peers. He has saved the Enterprise several times. So I really enjoyed that character, and I enjoyed Will Wheaton's performance on it. I've met Will Wheaton, and the guy is cool as shit. He's a geek just like we are. Um, the way he is on TV, the way he is, in interviews and such, and doing you know, uh, uh, like podcast shows, online shows, and whatnot. Like, he really is that cool. I know I didn't get to speak with him for very much, or for very long, but the guy's got a big heart, you can tell. And it was really kind of nice to talk about, to tell him about my group, The Promenade, and why I made it, to kind of reach out people, and people who, were outcasts and didn't have anywhere to go, or people that, had been on drugs, or people that had alcohol problems, to just kind of give them a support group. And it was really kind of flattering to hear him say, that's, those, that type of mentality is what got him into gaming. Um, because it keeps people away from that type of stuff, and it is a positive environment. And to kind of get the approval of my childhood hero was just, really awesome to me. So whenever I watch Encounter at Farpoint, I see the beginning of, a character that, even though he grew to hate it and then grew to love it again, I've got nothing but love and admiration for that character, because so much of that is a big part of who I am even today. So tip of my hat to the people for making a character that, as a kid, that I could relate to. Then you had Dr. Beverly Crusher. Honestly, I love Gates McFadden. I think her character of Beverly Crusher, when used properly, is just an awesome character. I think she grew to be a MILF, when because she was looking pretty hot in some of those later season episodes. But first season, I don't think they used her very well. I know Gates McFadden was arguing with producers a lot, on how they were writing her character and whatnot. And I just think that's really kind of a sad thing, which is one of the reasons why they got rid of her for season 2. And then when they got rid of the writer or producer, that was, doing, in charge of that type of stuff, they brought her back. So when I found that stuff out, I found that really fascinating. But especially in Encounter Farpoint, they really didn't have her do much. So it was kind of a bland character. They didn't really give her anything of substance to work with. So it wasn't anything that was too interesting. Then we had Lieutenant Tasha Yar. Now, I've got nothing against Denise Crosby. I don't think that she's the greatest actress, but I got nothing against her. Obviously she's more successful than I am. I drive a forklift for a living. She's, an actress making royalty rights, But I felt that they kind of made her a weak security officer in this episode. I didn't really see much of any character development there. I just kind of saw her as, no, Captain, we have to do this. And he's like, okay, why? Because I'm a generic security officer that has to act like there's tension here. I didn't buy that, and of course he shot her down every chance, because she really wasn't making a lot of sense. I wish they had written her character a lot better than they did. Like I said, I didn't really relate to her character in any type of fashion. I didn't take her seriously as a character. I felt like she was kind of lame. Like she really just didn't belong there. I feel like with LeVar Burton and with Michael Dorn, those are two characters that were small characters that they didn't really give them a lot to do with, but I felt like they took a little bit and they gave a lot. And with her, I did not feel that performance at all. She came across as whiny. She came across as just kind of typical, I'm a woman badass, and I didn't buy that. I think they were trying to go for more of a Ripley vibe, and it just didn't come through at all. Not with Denise Crosby. And I know there's some people who will fight, tooth and nail and be like, no, she is awesome. Didn't Tasha Yar? Tasha Yar had some pretty good episodes throughout the first season. This wasn't one of them. In fact, she's in one of my favorite episodes of the series altogether, Yesterday's Enterprise. One of my favorite episodes in all of Star Trek. And she's a big part of the reason why. But for the first episode, I just felt like they either the writers were off or her acting was off, but I didn't buy it. So I felt again they made another character that was weak, just like with Beverly Crusher, kind of weak character. Now this character that I'm going to bring up next, I love Marina Certis as an actress. I think she's good. I've seen her in some things that she's done, and really good actress. As a kid, watching Star Trek The Next Generation for the first time, every scene she was in, it just seemed to drag on and on. And for a little kid who's watching it for the excitement and the adventure, and of course I would go play in my room, play Star Trek and whatnot, and I would mimic what I was seeing on TV. But for her, oh my God, that performance was terrible, especially at the end where she's talking about the feelings of I don't even, I'm not going to imitate it because I'm embarrassing myself just thinking about how she did the performance. But just watch that scene where the two aliens, outside the ship are, kind of join, their tendrils or whatever. They're kind of hold tendrils or whatever. Like, just watch that whole scene and try not to watch it without cheesing up, because oh my god, it's one of the worst things to sit through. It's pretty terrible. So I don't think that, like, she wasn't winning any award based on that performance. And I found her character, even as a little kid, and I know today it's popular to say, oh, she just overstates the obvious. But as a little kid, like, that really got me to thinking, why the hell is she on the bridge? Like, no offense, Wesley had more of a point to be there than she does, because she's overstating the obvious. Oh, aliens are firing at us. Oh, they're angry, Captain. Well, no shit, they're fucking firing at us. So I don't think that her character was a strong character. I think Counselor Troy was a figment of the time, because back then a lot of people were, go to therapy. That was a pretty big thing in the 80s, where everyone was talking therapy this and counselor this and maybe need to see a counselor and whatnot. And so I think, although we do have counselors these days, and I'm not saying people don't need them. I'm just saying, to make her a bridge officer to sit right next to the captain, I don't buy it. If you were to put, if you were to take the Deep Space Nine crew and put them on that bridge, I couldn't see Ezri Dax sitting next to Cisco. I mean, it was stupid. They only put her on there because she was a Betazoid, and I saw Troy as a character of convenience, and anytime you have a character like that, it just takes you out of the environment. Now, like with Wharf, that's a guy that's pissed off. He's going to want to fight. You have, with Data, you have a character that can do multiple, very fast things, and he's just very, very smart. He's going to figure shit out. And then you have Geordi, a blind guy that can fly, the ship, even though he's blind, can't see a thing, without his visor. So you have those three characters, and I just find it really ironic that the one person I look at and go, you are not very realistic to me, is the counselor. They really didn't, her acting was bad in this episode. Very, very bad. She gives a very wooden performance. And she's had some good episodes in the series. Don't get me wrong. This isn't a I hate Marina Certis bash, but this was not her episode. Like, all three of the women I felt were very weak in this episode. And that's very sad, considering they were trying to be very modern, trying to, take that footing. Because at the time, women were, seen as the weaker, of the sex, which, not true. But the way these characters were written, it didn't help out that movement at all. But anyway, overall, the episode I felt was pretty good. There's a character named Groppler Zorn, typical Star Trek bad guy. No one really that you take seriously. He's up to no good. He's a liar. The ending where they make, the starbase, actually ends up being the alien. It's, kind of, for being a very first episode and introducing the cast, I think it's very strong in that category. Storytelling wise, if you go with the Q stuff, very strong selling point on that. Justifying why we're out here, justifying humanity has grown. And so I like I like the episode in that regard. The Farpoint stuff I felt was a little bit boring. It could have been shortened a lot more. And some of the character development, some of the characters, of course, they hadn't found their footing, so maybe that's why I see it as weak writing or weak character. But that's my take on it. I would say probably the episode Encounter at Farpoint, for everything, pros and cons, I would say I'd say probably an 8 out of 10. It had some pretty strong hits. It did a really good job of setting up most of the characters, even if not all of that was satisfying. But that Farpoint storyline I felt was really kind of weak. The ending was abysmal to me. And again, with the Troy, with Troy in that, I kind of, if I was a director and she's sitting there like, saying her lines, I'd been like, cut, cut, cut. What the fuck is that? Get her off my set, you know? Like, I just, I thought that was, you know, like that, those things were the only things that were really damning about the episode. So, anyway, comment below, let me know what you think. Hit me up on Facebook, let me know if you like what I had to say, if you didn't like what I had to say. Obviously, the series is a good series. It went on for 7 years, had 4 movies. Questionable whether they were successful or not, but strong fan base. Still loved today. So yeah, hit me up. Let me know what you think, and keep on geeking on, guys.